A year ago, Paul O'Neill was fired from his job as George Bush's Treasury Secretary for disagreeing too many times with the president's policy on tax cuts. Tonight, O'Neill, who is known for speaking his mind, talks for the first time about his 2 years inside the Bush administration. His story is the centerpiece of a new book being published this week about the way the Bush White House is run. Entitled The Price of Loyalty, the book, by a former Wall Street Journal reporter, draws on interviews with high-level officials who gave the author their personal accounts of meetings with the president, their notes and documents. But the main source of the book was Paul O'Neill. Paul O'Neill says he's going public because he thinks the Bush administration has been too secretive about how decisions have been made.
Contrary to how we practice politics today in this country, there is some market for the truth.
Somebody's going to call it a kiss and tell book.
I've come to believe that people will say damn near anything, so I'm sure somebody will say all of that and more.
O'Neill, who was George Bush's top economic policy official, says in the book that the president did not make decisions in a methodical way. There was no free flow of ideas or open debate. At cabinet meetings, he says the president was like a blind man in a room full of deaf people. There is no discernible connection, forcing top officials to act on little more than hunches about what the president might think. This is what O'Neill says happened at his first hour-long one-on-one meeting with Mr. Bush.
I went in with a long list of things to talk about, and I thought to engage on. And as the book says, I was surprised that it turned out me talking and the president just listening.
He never asked a single question.
As I recall, it was mostly a monologue.
President Bush was disengaged, at least on domestic issues, he says, and that disturbed him.
This is a photograph of President Nixon. That's me there.
He told us that wasn't his experience when he worked as a top official under Presidents Nixon and Ford, or the way he ran things when he was chairman of Alcoa. O'Neill readily agreed to tell his story to the book's author, Ron Suskind. O'Neill says he's taking no money for his part in the book. You interviewed how many other people?
Oh, hundreds of people.
Hundreds?
Hundreds of people.
How many other cabinet members?
Several. Let's just say several.
But O'Neill is the only one who spoke on the record. Didn't someone in this administration, high up, call him on the phone and warn him not to do this book?
Yes, yes.
And who was it?
Don Rumsfeld.
Was it a warning or a threat?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it was the White House concerned, understandably, because O'Neill has spent extraordinary amounts of time with the president. They said this could really be the one moment where things are revealed.
And they are. Not only did O'Neill give Suskind his time, he gave him 19,000 internal documents.
I mean, everything's there. Memoranda to the president, handwritten thank you notes, 100-page documents, stuff that's sensitive, stuff that's
sensitive.
Right, yeah.
Transcripts of private meetings?
Yeah, in some cases.
High level?
Yep. National Security Council, you don't get higher than that.
And what happened at President Bush's very first National Security Council meeting is one of O'Neill's most startling revelations.
From the very beginning, there was a conviction that Saddam Hussein was a bad person and that he needed to go.
He says that going after Saddam Hussein was topic A 10 days after the inauguration, 8 months before September 11th.
From the very first instance, it was about Iraq, it was about what we can do to change this regime.
Now, everybody else thought that grew out of 9/11.
No.
But this book says it was day one of this administration.
Day one, these things were laid and sealed.
As Treasury Secretary, O'Neill was a permanent member of the National Security Council. He says in the book he was surprised at the meeting that questions such as why Saddam and why now were never asked. It's all about finding a way to do it. That was the tone of it. The president saying, go find me a way to do this.
For me, the notion of preemption, that the U.S. has the unilateral right to do whatever we decide to do, is a really huge leap.
And that came up at this first meeting.
It did.
O'Neill told us the discussion of Iraq continued at the next National Security Council meeting 2 days later. He got briefing materials under this cover sheet.
There are memos. One of them, marked secret, says, plan for post-Saddam Iraq.
Nation building.
Absolutely.
So they discussed an occupation of Iraq
In January and February of 2001.
Based on his interviews with O'Neill and several other officials at the meetings, Suskind writes that the planning envisioned peacekeeping troops, war crimes tribunals, and even divvying up Iraq's oil wealth. Suskind obtained this Pentagon document dated March 5, 2001, entitled Foreign Suitors for Iraqi Oil Field Contracts. It includes a map of potential areas for exploration.
It talks about contractors around the world from, 30, 40 countries, and which ones have what intentions or
on oil
in Iraq.